Hello, and welcome back to another episode of
Super Stache Brothers.
So today it's going to be a little bit more of a serious video as we talk about some of our favorite strange disappearances. Both big fans of the unexplained, mysteries, disappearances, all that true crime jazz. So, and I always love reading about it on Reddit, so I figured it'd be a good idea to share it with everyone and see what you guys think of it. Maybe get your take on it, and help you dive down the rabbit hole of unexplained. So if you want, I'll let you start us off.
Oh, okay. Well, we each decided to pick one unexplained disappearance, and we're going to talk about it. And so you'll get 2 per episode. The first one is actually an old one, but it's still talked about today. And that's the disappearance of Owen Parfitt. So what we know about the Parfitt family is that during the 1700s in a town called Shepton Mallet, there was a family called Parfitt. And little is known except for Mary Parfitt and Owen Parfitt, because they're the main ones of this story, and they were the 2 that were surviving during the time of the disappearance. But what we know about Owen is that he apprenticed as a tailor from his father. This is something that he really didn't ever take to. He didn't like being a tailor. So when he was old enough, he actually enlisted in the army, and he just disappeared. So for a long time, he was just gone. Nobody knew if he was alive or dead. His parents died. His other siblings died, if he had them. Like I said, there's not much talked about besides Mary and Owen. But back then, it was usually you had more in a family than just 2 children. So we can assume that he probably had others. But we're talking a long time passes. And so all of a sudden, Mary, she's probably in her 80s now, which would put Owen in his late 60s to early 70s, because he's like 15 years younger than Mary. All of a sudden, he shows back up, and he is crippled. He has really, really bad arthritis and can barely move and everything like that. And nobody, like his parents are dead and everything like that. And the only person that actually can recognize him is Mary. And so she recognizes him as her brother. So they actually move back in together so that Mary can kind of take care of him and everything like that. And he decides he's going to pick back up on being a tailor again. Well, as time went on, Owen's condition worsened. And so he wasn't able to work at all. Mary, he actually become almost to the point where he was paralyzed all over. So it wasn't just that he had a hard time moving and everything. He basically couldn't move anymore. And Mary actually cared for him. Well, Mary's like in her mid-80s by this point. So she's getting very feeble herself and everything like that. And but she's going to take care of her brother and everything. And she's a hard worker, a diligent woman for the time and stuff like that. And so she would actually get one of her neighbors named Susanna Shook, who lived about 50 yards from the house, to come on nice evenings. They would take Owen and they would set him outside, like on a porch, like in this little garden area of the house, so that he could sit outside, see people pass by, maybe chat to the people as they pass by and everything like that. And then she would go up and get his room ready for bed and do some other chores. Usually wouldn't leave him out there for, 30 minutes or something like that. So on one day in June 1768, It was a nice day, and they've done just that. Mary called over Susanna, who helped her take Owen outside, and they set him down, made sure that he was comfortable. They just set him in a chair, and they actually put like this old greatcoat around him so it would just kind of keep him warm and everything, because he was in his pajamas. It's kind of up in the evening, and Mary's going to get everything ready for bed and stuff like that. And so once they knew that he was comfortable and everything, Susanna went back to her house. Mary went upstairs and started her work. Well, probably about 30 minutes passes, and then all of a sudden news comes to Susanna that Mary's like freaking out and everything like that. And so she runs back over to Mary's house, and she's like sobbing and weeping, and she's like, Owen's disappeared and nobody knows where he's at. And like, so this guy's crippled, he can't move at all. And so they're looking around, and Susanna says that the chair is exactly where she placed it. Like, she looks around and the chair has not moved an inch. The only thing that's left is the greatcoat that they had is like actually on the back of the chair right now. So, of course, Mary's like freaking out and everything like that. And she raises the alarm to the town, and the whole town starts searching for Owen. They search everywhere. And they even search into like unlikely places where they dredge the ponds, they look in all the ditches, they check all the wells, they even like check inside the outhouses and everything like that to see if he's in there.
You never know. Because
he's disappeared. I mean, just without a trace. And so the whole town is frantically searching for this crippled man that has disappeared, and no one knows how, because it's only been 30 minutes. And the big thing is like it's like hay season during this time, so all around like there's people everywhere like working on the fields and stuff like that. So there's no way that in broad daylight somebody could just hoist this old man up and carry him off without anybody seeing it. So it was, everybody's like, we have no idea what's happened to this old man. So they look, and they even like, comes this terrible thunderstorm, and they look for him through the thunderstorm. It continues into the next day, and they look everywhere. And it's like, that's pretty much, they just give up. And they're like, we don't know what happened to this guy. So they actually think that, of course, this is back in the 1700s and everything. The consensus of the town was either A, demons came and hoisted him up and took him off, even though he wasn't really a bad man, but, that's how they explained it, was demons come and got him. Or B, in his youth, he was a pirate, and pirates actually came to the house and stole him so that they could force him to show him where he had buried a treasure in his youth. So that's the two consensus of the town and everything. And they're like, what else could it be? Because you got this old man, he's not working and everything, so he has no money. So they're like, why would somebody do this? He has pajamas on, so he doesn't even have pockets to hold valuables or anything. And then, the sister definitely can't hoist this man up and carry him off, because she's like feeble in her 80s and everything like that. And the whole place is surrounded by tons of people that would definitely see something if something happened. So it's demons or pirates. And that's where it stood for 50 years. Well, 50 years later, there's actually like this gentleman's group, and they come across the story and they get interested about it. And so they think, we're going to try to figure this out. So they actually go back to the town, and of course, during this time, there's not really records kept of anything or like that. So they basically go and they ask Susanna Shook for her testimony again. And she gives the exact same testimony as she did before. And they talk to other people around, and of course they all give about the same story and everything. There's only one man in the whole town, his name's Jehoshaphat Stone, who actually swore that Mary Parfitt told him that she had heard a loud noise come running down the stairs, and the chair was turned over. But they asked Susanna again. She says Mary never mentioned hearing a noise, and the chair was exactly where she left it. So they start searching around, looking for things, and then all of a sudden they find a skeleton under the wall near the cottage where they lived. And so they're like, haha, we've got this, we've got it figured out and everything. But it turns out that the skeleton was actually from a girl who was murdered years after Owen's disappearance. So to this day, everyone is still like, how can this old man who's surrounded by people, who's an invalid, and they questioned, was he really an invalid? And no one had ever seen this man walk after, so many years and everything like that. So they questioned whether he was actually an invalid. So he didn't get up and he didn't walk away. They searched everywhere around this town, like right after this happened too. So it wasn't like somebody had a long time to get rid of a body or anything like that. This old man just vanished. And to this day, no one knows what happened to poor Owen.
Definitely something out of a movie, almost. But there's a silver lining. At least the girl's murder was solved. So
yeah, that's true.
There's a silver lining to some things. That's interesting, though. I like older cases. I don't know, something just seems more creepy about it. It's been 200 years and no one still knows what happens to you. So no one really thinks that's how they're going to end up. And I think that's one of the reasons why cases of disappearances fascinate me so much anyway, is just because when you look at photos or hear about people, that they're all normal, average, everyday human, but they literally pretty much just vanished off the face of the earth. And so it's just weird to think that, these people have been gone for 3-4 decades and, the world still doesn't know what happened to them. So, but I also like that, it kind of keeps their memory alive until the day they do get found, which hopefully, a lot of these do. So, you never know. Stranger things have happened. Maybe we'll figure it out one day soon, just randomly.
It's through discussion of these things that usually things are figured out. So it's always good to dredge up and talk about these weird disappearances and stuff like that, because you never know when somebody sees something and they're like, hey, I have something to add to that. So, especially the stuff that's newer. I mean, 1700s, not so much. It's probably going to remain a mystery forever. But newer cases, you never know.
And speaking of newer cases, mine's a lot more newer. And it's probably one that a lot of people actually do recognize because this one made national media attention. Pardon me. That's the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. This one got a lot of news coverage, mainly because of just the odd facts surrounding the case. So, pretty much layout. Brian Shaffer, he's a medical student, gorgeous man, perfect life. He's a straight A student. He's on his way to becoming a doctor. He has a girlfriend, all these wonderful friends that are very supportive of him. Loving parents, comes from a very wealthy family. So, this guy pretty much has it made, really nothing to complain about. So about 6 months before he's due to graduate, his mom tragically passes away, and that really hit him hard. So became really depressed, really closed it off, but he still pressed through college because he wanted to graduate and get on with his career. So about, I think it was spring break, the day before spring break, his classes were to get out for spring break. He decided he wanted to go out drinking with a couple of his buddies, one last night out on the town before they graduated. He talked to his dad just a couple hours before this. His dad didn't really want him going out and drinking just because of all the stress he's been under. He'd been staying up every night studying for exams following the break. But his dad figured, he needed one night just to let loose and let it all out. So he agreed. They agreed to talk that coming weekend. So Brian goes out with his friends. He texts his girlfriend. She's still at home studying. He texts her about their plans. They're actually supposed to fly out. I think it's to Costa Rica for spring break. So, he had plans that he set in stone with her, and then he went out. And his friends started bar hopping, just a typical night out for a bunch of college kids. The night's going well. They start out at this little saloon. This is in Columbus, Ohio. So it's called the Ugly Tuna. It's, I've never heard of it, but it's supposed to be a really popular bar up around that area. So they start out there. It's on the second story of this building. The lower floor, I think, is just restaurants and stuff. But they start there, and then they work their way out of there to about 3 or 4 different bars in that vicinity before making their way back there for one final round. So his friends, after the fact, all say they all took maybe one shot each at each of the locations. So they were feeling pretty good by the time they got back to the Ugly Tuna about 1:55 or about 1:30 in the morning. So there's 2 cameras. There's one entrance, like I said, it's on the top of this building. There's one entrance to the Ugly Tuna Saloon, and that's right up these steps. And there's a camera not facing the door, but facing the hallway that leads to and from the entrance. So the cameras catch Brian and his friends going into the saloon. About 10 minutes later, Brian is shown near the exit talking to these 2 girls. He seems to say goodbye to them. They head off towards the exit off the bar, and he goes back inside. And this is about 1:55 a.m., and so the bar closes 5 minutes after. But immediately after they close and start kicking everyone out, they don't see Brian. And of course, this is after the fact. He gets separated from his friends. His friends are like, where's Brian? They figured he just went home, and they talked to him later. So they went home themselves, not really questioning anything. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 days later when his girlfriend's like, I've not heard from him. We're supposed to be leaving soon. Where is he? That people realize, no one's heard from him, and he's missing. So they go back, they review all the footage from the Ugly Tuna that night. He's nowhere. He's seen entering the bar that one last time about 1:55. He's never seen exiting it. The whole place is combed top to bottom. They don't really find any evidence of him being there. So, it's pretty much, he can't have just vanished inside the bar. He had to have gotten out somehow. So, like I said, there was one exit. The footage didn't catch anything or him leaving the bar from that exit. There was one other potential exit, and that was because there was construction going on right next door to the Ugly Tuna, so it kind of created a little gap for him to possibly squeeze out of. But again, if you're that, inebriated like his friend says he was, it's going to be really difficult to navigate that, especially in the dark. But they combed over all that area. They didn't find him, so they started to span out the search. Maybe he changed his clothes, or maybe he just got lost in the crowd somewhere and they just missed him. It happens. So they start, combing the area. They find his car. It's still parked at his apartment complex. Nothing's out of the ordinary. It's still locked. They check ravines. They check all the security footage from surrounding businesses. They don't find anything. And then they start, thinking, well, this is a high crime rate area, and so there's security cameras everywhere. He doesn't show up on any of them, walking down the street, leaving, entering anywhere. So all the theories start popping up. Maybe he got robbed and it went wrong. He was murdered. Maybe he was kidnapped. You never know. Then the theory pops up. He might have disappeared voluntarily. And he was still very depressed over his mom passing away. And he may have even been suicidal, so he may have went off to commit suicide somewhere by himself. And that's common, I mean, for suicide victims to make plans with their loved ones and stuff like that. But, I mean, again, it didn't seem in character with him because he was very focused on his studies. He was excited to graduate, move on, become a doctor. You know, there was even, I think his dad was talking, he was talking about proposing to his girlfriend soon after they graduated. So it doesn't really fit in line with a man who is going to disappear voluntarily. And again, his bank accounts haven't been touched. His cell phone hasn't really been activated at all until 6 months after he disappeared. His girlfriend, she called his phone every night, and this is actually kind of sad. She called it every night just to hear his voice on the voicemail. But one night, about 6 months later, it actually went through. It rang for about, I think, 4 or 5 times before it just cut off again. And they pinged it about 30 miles away from where he was last seen. And of course, you know, they're like, it means something. But the cell phone service provider was like, maybe it was just a glitch in the computer. Or, you know, we don't want to get your hopes up. It could be anything, but we highly doubt it's anything significant. So that was pretty much it for the case, you know. He just seemed to vanish into thin air. They don't know where he went. Did he disappear on his own? Did he be met with foul play? And that's when the theory of the smiley face killer was introduced. And so for a lot of people that don't know what the smiley face killer theory, I guess, basically it's all these unexplained deaths of college-age men. They all die near bodies of water, which the Ugly Tuna was. And the one thing they have in common in all these seemingly unrelated cases is there's a large smiley face graffiti on a wall nearby where the bodies are found. And this all happened, I think, within the distance of like 200 miles. 6 different men, most of them, all of them except Brian, were found, seemingly drowned. But, you know, a lot of these scholars put forth this theory maybe it is an uncaught killer who's been really good at covering his tracks. You know, because they all share the similar, they're all out on a night on the town, all around the same age, college-age dudes, all found near bodies of water. This graffiti's found on all of them. So it does kind of maybe point to maybe there is a potential serial killer out there, and he's just been really good at, you know, covering his tracks. A lot of people, you know, debunk that theory. You know, it's just people want to make things of things that aren't, which more than likely is true. But again, you never know. There could be a serial killer out there that has yet to be caught. But yeah, Brian, still no new leads 14 years later. Unfortunately, his dad passed away not too long ago without ever finding out what happened to his only son. He didn't give up the search the entire time he was alive. And I think it was weird the way he died. I think he got hit in the head with a tree branch when he went outside during a storm. So his family's been plagued with a lot of misfortune. But yeah, this one's very interesting because it is the fact that he disappeared in such a highly populated area, just out of nowhere. I mean, no scuffle, no signs of anything, witnesses at all. He just literally just vanished. So
I think that would be the hardest part of being a loved one of someone who's vanished, is just that never knowing, never having closure, any kind of closure and everything like that. I really feel for, like, you know, so many people go missing all the time, and there's so many people out there that they never get that closure.
And that's what, you know, like people on Disappearances today, knowing anything would be better than knowing nothing at all. It'd be better to know he's dead. So at least you have that peace of mind. He's not out there somewhere, potentially. You can rest easy knowing, you know, he's in a better place. You can put him to rest. But when they are gone, you know, it is that theory, like, were they killed? Are they kidnapped and being held hostage? Did they leave on their own to start a new life? Are they suffering from amnesia? That's another theory that was put forth. Maybe he hit his head and he's a part of the homeless population around that area and he's just never turned up and he's just living on the streets. So it is sad. It would definitely keep you up at night. And I do feel for people who have family members that have disappeared. So, but yeah. So that's 2 of our favorite, unsolved mysteries. We have plenty more, but I think we'll save that for another rainy day.
Yeah, actually, one thing that you can do is in the comments, maybe leave unsolved mysteries that you know about and everything like that you find interesting, and just give us a hint to what they are, and we'll research them up and we can talk about those too, because this is one of those things that I'm extremely fascinated about. I guess it is that unknowing, that unresolved feeling and everything like that. I start reading about them, and the next thing I know, I've read through like 6 when I was just started with 1. It always leads to more. So definitely chime in, tell us what mystery is interesting to you, and that way we can look it up.
So, yeah. Until next time, hope you enjoyed it.
Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time.